biomedical visual reasoning, radiology. I mean, there's so much cool stuff going on here. And this is going to skyrocket our medical practice.
Hey, how far is China behind? And he goes like, China? China's not behind.
It's not behind. No. As we already established, even the number one use of AI right now is companionship and therapy.
The robotics, the AI will be so advanced at that point in time that we don't even have a conception of how that will be.
We might see longevity, escape velocity become a reality with technology, allowing us to live healthier, longer, significantly longer.
Hey everybody, and welcome to episode number 30 of the Innovation Network newsletter. Hey Ara, how you doing?
Number 30. Wow.
Number 30.
Wow. Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm just super amazed that I actually managed to do 30 episodes. Yeah, if it wasn't for you, I would have never made it.
Yeah, it's a fun cycle every 2 weeks, and the amount of content that we have within 2 weeks that we have to select from to talk is keeps on increasing. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, we're also branching out. I mean, let's be honest. We're I think that especially lately we've been expanding into topics that do not specifically only cover AI or robotics, but more scientific and technological progress as a whole, which totally makes sense. Talking about singularity, I mean, obviously we always talk about technology's exponential development, not AI-specific exponential development. So yeah, it all makes sense. But yeah.
AI is basically the engine in any direction, any industry, any type of technology that keeps on increasing. So,
talking about surfing the waves of exponential change towards the singularity. What's the latest on your book?
Yeah, some big news. We have a final title. So, as you know,
is it different? Are you changing the title because it used to be
Singularity
Server?
The publisher is changing the title, which was a little bit too expected. The title was Singularity Server. Mm-hmm. And the publisher thought a couple of things. First of all, the book will be in Dutch. Singularity Server is English. It does apply in Dutch, but they were a little bit afraid it was too narrow to speak to a larger audience. So the new title of the book will be Waves of Abundance.
Waves of Abundance.
Waves of Abundance.
Okay.
And then, of course. And then with the subtitle, Learning and Living in Exponential Times.
Okay, that does totally sound, in that respect at least, the title changes that it very much sounds like also a very conscious consideration of how what's happening is actually leading to post-scarcity economics.
Exactly. That is, of course, in every of the 5 waves that I describe in the book. Yep. But now it's also put in the title, and then the cover will be a singularity server. So the figure that we have in the artwork, that a, let's say, a meta-human or uber-human or however you want to call it, is surfing the waves, will be then on the cover. So all these things are then combined. And the reason that we have now this title, or we needed to lock it down, is because they have some kind of pre-publishing for the ordering of the second half of the year. Yeah. So I get an ISBN number, specific number in the Netherlands to be published, and the pre-orders can then be taken place. So that's nice.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Patrick, man, that's so cool. I'm totally looking forward. Oh, is it English or Dutch? Oh man, didn't we decide something? Yeah, well, now we're going to continue in English.
Yeah. Well, we did a poll in the last newsletter. I didn't look at the results yet, so let's do the poll, run it for another week, and see how the responses are. But until then, we'll just keep doing it. But my book will be published in Dutch to start with. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, but that is nice. So that accidentally we put that in. So we've been making this newsletter 30 editions now, and we've been doing it in English because we thought that our message and the topic are international. But obviously we're Dutch, and a lot of the people that are in our newsletter subscribers are Dutch. Patrick's book is in Dutch. So we put a poll in the last newsletter to ask if people want us to continue the newsletter in English or if they would prefer it in Dutch. So if you hear this and you see this and you haven't checked out the last newsletter, go and check it out and let us know in the poll if you haven't already, so that we can make an educated decision on that. But yeah, Waves of Abundance. When can people start signing up for the book?
Within a couple of weeks. I think not this newsletter, but the next newsletter where we have a sign-up sheet ready to go.
Awesome.
Hey, and is there anything from you that stand out from the past week, just top of mind?
Well, we were joking about it because I added like a whole bunch of stuff, which is, of course, always what's going on. But let me quickly run through a few things that I noticed. So what we see here is a post from Grant Lee, and Grant Lee is the CEO of Gamma. right? Now, Gamma, for those that don't know, is an AI startup that has made a website tool to create presentations and website and socials. Right. So if you haven't tried it already, go and try it out. We're not advertising for it. We're not affiliates or anything, but it is an AI startup. And he recently posted this, and this is, of course, an AI generated image. But the whole point here is that he made a very, very clear statement where he said, well, look, if we were from a generation before with our company, so if we were like a dot-com bubble company, or if we were a app company late 2010s, we would have easily been already at 200 employees. And right now, Gamma, which is already a global product with millions of people using it, has 28 people. And that's relevant because that shows how, although we see a lot of news now that says, well, AI is not that impactful yet. We're not seeing that massive reduction in the labor force yet. And I think that people, again, are having this cognitive bias where, because they've been so aware of a development from the very early stages on through social media and hyperconnectivity, they feel that it is taking so long that they think that the results are not coming. But if you look at the forefront of the companies that are actually in the AI space, you see that it is actually happening, which is proof that development is actually a real thing. There's just a significant delay, and people are underestimating how long are kind of impatient, so to speak, for this to hit the mainstream. Because established companies, of course, have a much longer time to kind of change this. If they already have 2,000 employees, they're not just going to fire 1,000 overnight right now. I mean, even if they would want to do that, that would cause a havoc, right? They would get so much flashback, so many problems. So that process is a little bit more gradual and slower.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. It reminds me of the period that you had to move from traditional computing to cloud computing. Cloud computing didn't start within those traditional companies. It were new incumbents on the market that could do it faster and cheaper. And now it's happening again, right? You don't go to a large agency where 1,000 people work, but Gamma brings you a long way. And they only have 27 people. How much did you say? How many people did they have?
28 people, yeah.
28 people. And it's a global company, right?
Yeah. And that kind of thing was really unheard of until a few years ago. I mean, Steam, for those of you that don't know, Steam is the platform for gaming on PC. And Steam has for almost a decade been a complete outlier in that it is a super, super small company where the revenue and the margin per employee was over 1.4 million, I think, which was crazy high. And everybody was like, how are these guys doing this? They're like literally the most profitable company in the world for ages. And now we're seeing that in the AI space, multiple companies like this are starting to rise up. Yeah,
absolutely. And the same goes with Lovable and all these, let's say, AI development companies. They are growing like crazy, and the average revenue per employee is through the roof. That's So let me show you something else that I discovered that I also found interesting, and I wanted to show you. So this was a report on Visual Capitalist, and it shows a shift in how people are using generative AI.
Yeah.
And I thought it was just mind-blowing. In 1 year time, 2024 on number one, generating ideas. Here you have specific search, edit text. Those are all gone. Therapy and companionship, the number one. Organized life, finding purpose. Which is interesting, right? How often have we talked about AI is going to replace us, and how do we find purpose? People are using apparently AI to find some kind of purpose, generating code.
What this means, one of the big criticisms of AI is like, oh, when they take our jobs, we don't have any purpose. And what does this show us? This shows us that people are already in a existential crisis because they don't know what their purpose is.
Yeah, we've always been in an existential crisis, right? So, but the shift is huge. Also, the generating codes on number 5. So many people are using it for that purpose because, it's predominantly developers that are using it, of course.
Interview prep, generate images. Yeah, healthy living is an interesting one. Look how fast that went up.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I have also been doing this. I actually got a subscription on the, MyFitnessPal app. For years, I rejected that, but now they have AI integrated where you can take a picture of your food and it kind of makes an assessment of what's in there. And so all of these things kind of in AI integrations, they make it so much easier to kind of keep track of things, because in the past you had to fill in your car, the calories and the micronutrients and all that, and it just made it so annoying to do all of that. You just didn't do it. So this is where this kind of thing can really help. Yeah.
And the most striking for me is the number one, right? A lot of people are kind of pushing back on that. Is it a real true companionship? Is it healthy to do that? I think that healthy living can also be some kind of companionship that guides you through eating healthy or sport a lot. Yeah, it's the number one at the moment.
Yes, and it's super important. We'll get to this because there's something else I would love to cover, and we're going to cover it shortly in this newsletter, but we'll get back to this. So talking about the visual capitalist, I also have one to share from the visual capitalist. So for those of you that don't know the visual capitalist, this is always, a great place to go for super interesting insights. So who's winning the AI patent race? Everybody thinks it's the US, of course, and we've covered this before. But what we see here is that, at least in terms of patents, China is doing what it has been doing in every single other aspect of the modern world, and that's like it's just sprinting to the top and sprinting ahead of everybody else, right? And we've covered this before. We don't need to go into it too long, but this just is another perfect way of highlighting how China is absolutely not trailing behind in the AI race.
No. There's this interview online that some US reporter is interviewing Jensen Huang and asking the question, hey, how far is China behind? And he goes like, China's not behind.
It's not behind. No.
It's just funny. Yeah.
And of course,
let me show you one other one that I just thought is cool. It catched my eye.
Yeah.
Disappeared somewhere on my timeline, and I was thinking, okay, this is fake news.
Yeah,
and I searched for it.
Did you think it was fake news? Okay.
I thought, doesn't it look like this? This is just pure science fiction.
The first thing I thought obviously was, hey, that's a Star Wars speeder bike.
But apparently this is real, and you can order one. And I think I'm going to save some money to try to get something like this. This is just pretty awesome.
I need to. We need to sell more innovation dinners. So for you people out there who haven't had an innovation dinner yet, and you really want to upscale your company to the next level in terms of what is technological progress, go and get our innovation dinner, because we need a Star Wars speed bike.
And then we'll come on the speed bike, so you can try it out yourself.
Well, man, that would be great if we could give a dinner at Bromma in Rotterdam, and then people can, go for a ride on the VTOL bike around the neighborhood before. I think you probably need a license for that, but it would be kind of cool. Yeah.
Okay. Any more hot topics on your mind?
Well, I want to cover. I'll just do this in one go. I'll cover the 3 or 4 news topics that I saw, and I'll just quickly run through them. So, first up, Japan. Record-shattering flexible solar cell with 26.5% efficiency developed in Japan. And on top of this, there was an announcement that Japan is moving to a super solar panel. And this has been misinterpreted as if China, because they said it's going to generate 20 gigawatts of capacity, which is more than nuclear reactors. But this is not a technology. This is Japan saying, we are going to implement this new solar cell technology, which is flexible and super efficient. And for those of you that don't know, it says 26.5 more efficient, right? But you have to keep in mind that in the last 2 years, efficiency of solar cells has gone up like 1 million times, right? We've done more progress in the last 2 years than in the previous 68 years altogether. Exponential change. So 26% again is massive. That means that we made more progress in this single step than in like 30 years combined previously. And so Japan is saying, now we're going to implement this everywhere. They're going to put it on buildings. They're going to put it on parking lots. They're going to put it everywhere. They want to transition all of China to super solar power to reduce their need of any kind of other energy production. And this is important because this highlights that Japan is moving this way, and they can with this technology because it's super cheap, super powerful. China is already leading the world in solar power, who has actually reduced their coal and oil usage this year significantly by pushing for solar and pushing for nuclear. Australia is doing the same thing. The UK have completely shut down all of their coal and oil. So what we're seeing an exponential acceleration in our move to sustainability. Now, personally, I'm not a fan of wind energy, and I've said that before, and I'll say it again, especially when you see these developments, because the progress made in solar power and in nuclear power is significantly more faster and more powerful than that in wind energy, where we're still looking at turbines that need to be replaced every 20 years, and their efficiency is significantly lower. So I wanted to quickly cover that.
Oh, cool.
Next one, engineers at UMass Amherst harvest abundant clean energy from thin air. So this ties into the previous one. So at Massachusetts University, they've developed a technology that basically creates electricity from the air, from water and particles moving through pores. Now, I don't know how it works, but I just want to highlight that, again, this is a result of them using advanced materials, which was a result of partially of AI unearthing or inventing or finding new materials that can be used. And this is one of the earliest examples of how this new material is going to be used to create, for example, energy in edge devices, which will then power AI models on edge devices in the future as well. So that's cool. Yeah. So I quickly wanted to show this. This is the Lynx M20, and this is a robot.
Oh, that's the one. It can also go in water, I
It
saw
can
recently.
go freaking anywhere. So, I mean, I think it's super cool. It's also super scary because, I mean, I don't know if you've recently seen the movie Electric State. It kind of flopped on Netflix, but it's about this kind of future where robots kind of, start to rebel. And I don't know if you've seen the last War of the Worlds rehash. There was a War of the Worlds series, 2 seasons, which was a completely new take on the topic. And I won't give it away, no spoilers. But in that War of the Worlds movie, at the first season, most of the season, you only see robots like this, but without the wheels, and they are running around killing people. And that was freaking scary. It's almost horror sci-fi scary. But then I thought, well, at least those robots, they won't be able to go in the desert or anything like that. And then I saw this and I was like, oh, we're cooked. So yeah.
Do you have an idea of the retail price for this device? Is that reasonable, comparable to, for instance, the humanoid robots that we have been discussing quite a lot?
I don't know. I don't know. But what I do know,
what you now have there, that looks a little bit like Spot from Boston.
So that's from Boston Dynamics. Yeah,
and that is a very expensive device, right? I think it's.
Is it?
Yeah, it's an expensive device.
Hey, ChatGPT, we're just wondering what's the retail price of one of those dog-like robots from Boston Dynamics, Spot, because they're now being rolled out for working in fire departments and stuff like that. Are they expensive?
Yeah, Spot from Boston Dynamics is definitely on the pricey side. The base retail price is around $75,000 USD, and that's before adding any specialized payloads or accessories, which can push the total cost even higher. Fire departments and other organizations investing in Spot are typically looking at a substantial financial commitment, but they're banking on its capabilities and versatility in hazardous environments to justify the cost.
Okay, well, that might be true, but then again, this is in China because you see, or Korea, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that what we'll see now with the whole revolution in robotics is that the prices will go down because technology is deflationary, right?
Absolutely.
And if production goes up, then cost goes down. So I think that price will very quickly deflate. And so I wanted to show this together because I think it's super cool that we're seeing this introduction of these robots in these kind of scenarios because it will be so powerful to see robotics and AI do things for good. So open source healthcare AI models. I just wanted to quickly highlight this. This is a list of open source healthcare AI models, right? This is not a complete list, but just look at how many, and not all of these, but pretty much all of these models have their foundations in large language models. So again, I want to stress this because there is so much skepsis and criticism regarding AI and how much energy it costs and whether it's useful, and people complain about that stuff. And I just want to point out that every step of progress made on ChatGPT, every step of progress made on Meta's Llama, every step of progress made by Anthropic, all of this culminates in the improvement of a technology that is also used for massive good. And I'm just talking healthcare here. We're not even talking in any other fields right now, because there's plenty others that I could discuss, but just look at all of these things. And what are they being used for?
And these are only the open source models.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
That's a tiny portion of everything else.
Tiny portion, right? Disease prediction. Yeah, a lot of this is medical stuff, but people can look it up. This is a Notion list. I will probably share it in the newsletter with the link and under the video. So you can go and look it up, check it out. Biomedical visual reasoning, radiology. I mean, there's so much cool stuff going on here. And this is going to skyrocket our medical practice forward and save so many lives. So yeah.
Yeah. So cool. Let's move on and let's talk about the birth cap. That is, I think, the first larger topic that we have on the agenda.
Yeah. So this week I ran into a YouTube video by a Dr. Stephen Shaw about the birth gap. And from that, I went to his documentary, The Birth Gap, Childless World, released in 2021 already, so 4 years ago, which went under the radar. And I was struck by this because basically his message is, okay, we are seeing no global population growth anymore. We are already seeing population decline, and this will lead to population collapse. And this is something that Elon Musk has also been saying. And from my part, when people talk about AI and its impact on labor markets and the world, I've been focused on Western developed, technologically developed nations. And I've specifically there seen something that made me initially completely believe everything Dr. Stephen Shaw said. Because if you look at Japan, they are, and this is a fact, losing 700,000 people a year. If you look at South Korea, they're losing 200 to 300,000 people a year. These nations are a little bit ahead of Western European countries and North America, which means that these are our countries, and North America as well, in the next 2 decades will also move into population decline. And definitely all of us, just like Japan and Korea are already suffering, will have, a very chunky size of our population be over 60. And that is, for me, has been something that is inevitable and therefore is something that's important to consider when you think about AI and robotics in the future, because a lot of people say, well, this is going to be bad for us. But as we already established, even the number one use of AI right now is companionship and therapy, right? And so in Korea, for example, they have this test running with yodels where 7,000 elderly got a yodel AI robot to talk to, and this significantly alleviated their feeling of loneliness, which is one of the most important problems with the elderly people in the modern world, is that because we lost core families, because everybody is more dispersed, because we can work anywhere and everywhere and we can travel, elderly people are no longer at home taken care of by their families, and therefore they end up being alone. And because they're alone and they lose their friends, because everybody's basically dying, let's face it, and they become less mobile, they become very lonely. And so that's already one of the great ways that AI can help with that. Now, Stephen Shaw...
So can I ask a question about
go on.
that? Why is this brought into the news that negatively? Like it's a collapse. It was Elon Musk says, it's a big problem. What do they see as the big problem that we have a little less people on planet Earth? So we will grow to about 10 billion. We might drop down to maybe 9 or 8 billion towards the end of the 21st century. Those are the predictions at the moment. What's the big problem?
Well, the big problem
Other than elderly people, right? Other than elderly people.
Yeah, well, the problem, I mean, for one, it is an accelerating problem in any case. If you start having less children than the replacement rate, right, then that means that there will be less children to have children again. So it's an exponential problem. Right. And this is also what Dr. Stephen Shaw says. And this is why they, I have to say, go to birth gap facts if you're interested, because a lot of what he says apparently based on pretty much everybody else's assessment is not entirely true. The expectation is that population growth will stop somewhere between halfway this century and the end of the century. So we'll definitely see a stagnation of global growth, but nobody really believes that we'll see population collapse. But I do feel that, mathematically speaking, Elon Musk and Stephen Shaw, they're right. I mean, once you have a decline, it becomes almost impossible to revert from that if it is global. That's a problem, because if two people have one child, then that transcends every generation.
If two people have one child and two other people also have one child, and those two further down the line decide to go back to 1, 2, 3, or 4 children, maybe that's something that will happen in 100 years. Who the fuck knows? Then it can grow again, right? So
yes, but historically speaking, whenever civilizations become more technologically advanced and the quality of life increases, almost always there is a reduction in the amount of children that's had per family, per woman. So almost inevitably, always the replacement rate goes underwater. And so
and if that is in balance with society, and if that's a conscious decision we all make because we live so luxurious and we have the technology and we can decide how long we live, maybe we then need less people on the planet. Maybe that's a balance. So who says it needs to be 10, 12, 14 billion? Why is 8 or 6 billion not a better number? That I don't see.
Okay, but you're bringing in a lot of interesting things here, and that's what it's about. So first of all, economically speaking, right? If not, and I'm just going in everything I'm going to say next. I'm going to assume that everything would progress more or less the same as we've seen in the last several thousand years, right? So we're not going to include AI, we're not going to include longevity medicine and the potential of humans living longer. I'm just going to leave that out of the equation for now. I'm just going to continue based on the linear expectations that we have and what we know of the world, and that we have, examples of in the past. Economically speaking, for example, pensions in the West are completely dependent on the current generation of young people working. That means that for every elderly person, there need to be, at the start of the 80s, there would be 7 young people working to pay and earn basically the pension of one pensionada, right? That's how it works in modern states. Today, that's already down to 2, which puts an extremely high financial and economic pressure on the working class generation to provide for the older generation. And this is a very broad misconception. So you can see that if that problem, if it continues, it becomes impossible, right? So if we live in a capitalistic world, then having more elderly people outside of the labor market than young people inside of it is basically economic collapse. So that's one of the reasons. So assuming that nothing changes outside of what we've known so far, that is a massive problem for the Western world.
Right, but things are changing. All the things that you just sparked are changing.
Exactly. And so
extremely and exponentially.
Exactly. And that's exactly why I bring this up when I put this in the newsletter. Yeah, so things are changing. So what I think we can take from this is that, one, it's not just that we might see longevity, escape velocity become a reality with technology, allowing us to live healthier, longer, significantly longer. But we'll need that. If we don't get AI and robotics, then that will be an absolute necessity, because otherwise we won't be able to keep our economies going and our civilization going. If we don't have longevity, escape velocity, then it will be a necessity to have AI and robotics to prop up productivity and efficiency in the economy if we want to stay within capitalism. And if we have neither of those, then capitalism will fall. But if we have just AI and robotics, capitalism will also fall, because ultimately they will end up replacing every human, because they're simply far more efficient and productivity will scale in the next decades. But we're having all of that, right? We're having all of that. So yeah, that creates a completely different situation. So I'm not worried about population collapse that much, because I think we will have longevity, escape velocity become a reality. And I'm also not worried about productivity going down in economies, because I believe we will have AI and robotics propping this up. But the important thing is here to realize is that because of the things that are happening, robotics and AI will become inevitable, because governments will have no choice but to adopt these things. And the same goes for the longevity medications. Once they see that the young people are falling off and everybody's becoming basically elderly or dying off, they'll be like, holy shit, we need to do something about this. They're gonna under those pressures, they're gonna say, okay, we're just gonna roll out medication to everybody that they become 200 years old. We're gonna roll out AI and robotics to prop up the economy, to keep this stuff going. Ultimately, I still think they'll have to move away from capitalism, but these things are gonna happen under those pressures.
The thing with these topics is that they're so far out in time as well. So if you would live, let's say, 50 years longer, when will you actually have the benefits of that? The next 30 years for you would be the same. It's the 30 years after that would be longer. Before then, we already hit the point of the singularity, right? So same for this decline. This point of decline, we're talking about something that will happen, let's say, the third 2020, 75, something like that. Then something can go down in numbers. Then the robotics, the AI will be so advanced at that point in time that we don't even have a conception of how that will be.
I agree completely with that. We'll hit the singularity before we'll hit the really serious problems with this. But I do think that maybe you're underestimating the speed at which these for example, this impact on population and the labor market will hit. Like I said, Japan is already losing 700,000 a year. Extrapolate that, because you said 2075, we're in 2025. Now that's 50 years. So if that were happening in Japan, let's bring it down to Japan's losing 500,000 a year. If that would continue for the next 50 years, they would lose 25 million people. Yeah, 25 million people on an economy. I don't know how many Japanese people are there. Let's do a quick check here.
150 billion?
Hey, ChatGPT, how many Japanese people are there in Japan? What's the population size?
Japan's population is currently around 124 million people. This number has been gradually declining.
Okay, so that's a decline of 1/5. And that's on the low side, because I rounded it down to 500,000, right? So they're probably going to be closer to losing like 1/3 of their population. Man, imagine losing 1/3 of your population. That also means that they lose almost 1/3 of their labor force, right?
So that's another driver for them to go all in on AI and robotics, which I are already doing, right?
Exactly. And what does that mean? What does that mean if Japan says we're going all in on robotics and AI? That means that if the EU, under pressure of labor, what do you call them? Unions. Let's say, because I was talking at the Hydro. Hydro is a Norwegian company, and I gave them my keynote, and then one of their union leaders came to me and he said, "Oh, this is very worrying. They're going to take our jobs." And I said, "Yeah, but this needs to happen ultimately." And he was like, "I don't know about that," and he was already kind of resisting it. But imagine that the unions in Europe say, okay, they convince the EU to ban the adoption of AI and robotics in factories or stuff like that, right? Initially. Ultimately, they will have no choice but to accept it. Because if China and Japan and South Korea are all in on this stuff, then they will get such a massive competitive advantage. And the quality of life in those nations will be so significantly higher than here that people here will ultimately take to the streets and demand it. I mean, we're already paying 50K more for a Chinese car. Why? Why do Chinese people get like literally something that is 10 years ahead of the best thing we can get over here for almost half the price, right? Because we need to protect our European car companies. Now, get out of here. Anyway.
Okay, so, super interesting topic. So we move on to the next one, Aragorn. The next topic that we have on our radar is some reports and another new blog from Dario Amodei. He's the CEO of Anthropic.
What were your thoughts on that one?
I like it.
I loved it. I thought it was very interesting. Well. I do find that Dario kind of acts a little bit contrary to his own claims. He's always talking about the good of humanity and all of that, but then Anthropic as a company is the most harsh in prosecuting and suing people over the usage of or possibly, copyright infringement of their technologies, etc., which that's something that I don't understand. I mean, they're literally more nasty about that than, for example, OpenAI, which doesn't align for me with the tone of voice that Dario takes in his blogs, but that's a different story. Go on.
Yeah. So I was not aware that they were doing that. Let's pick on a little bit more on what you say that. Why is that so harsh, opposite to the blog that he just wrote?
Well, again, in this blog, he's talking about the importance of and the urgency of interpretability. It's interesting that he called it the urgency, because urgency implies that it's just a timely matter and it's not an important matter. And I think that is a very important matter. So just for reference, for our listeners and for our readers, the point that Dario makes, that Dario Amodei makes, is that right now, AI is a black box. And this is also something that a lot of people can't wrap their head around. How can it be that we have these super smart people that create this super smart technology, but they don't know how it works? And really, the answer is just the way it works with children. I mean, two incredibly smart people can have a kid together. That doesn't mean they know how the brains of the kid work or develop.
I like the metaphor.
This is the truth, right? Basically, AI scientists have figured out a way to bring an egg cell and a sperm cell on a silicon-based substrate together through computer code, and boom, it's created this new kind of developing thing, and it's doing incredible stuff. And they're training it. So just like you send your kid to school and you give your kid a bicycle and you help them ride on it, but how it's actually figuring out how to do all this stuff is simply amazing, and it's a black box. And he says, well, that's great. That's cool. We're doing very cool stuff. But scientifically speaking, you can never trust anything if you don't know how it works. because you can never know 100% certain that it's doing it the right way, that it came, So now there's this super strong incentive for all kinds of reasons. And on that, I would highly recommend you to read the blog, but to reverse engineer how AI gets to its answers, or to at least have some way to check this, because we need that. And that's very cool.
And here I think he does a perfect job, because I think this is the only AI company that is really out there publishing report after report, showing how it actually works, giving all the data, disclose the data set so everybody can test it for themselves. And some very interesting things are coming out of that, trying to understand how that black box is working, how that AI brain is working.
Yeah.
And so there are a couple of different reports. One of them is recently the moral code, besides the blog. And the blog is pointing to these reports as well. If you want to dive into it, we'll put it in the newsletter as well. Yeah. Is that they basically are reviewing 700,000 prompts that have been requested. They anonymize it, and then they see how Claude is putting them into different moral value buckets, if you will, to respond. And it kind of, like you would do when you're talking to me or maybe to your mother, in a different tone, respecting the values of somebody else who might be elder, or you make an assumption of what people like or how to behave. The system does exactly that.
Yes.
And not only on training data, that is kind of evolving over time, that the system is, for instance, going into, it's about knowledge. So I have to apply critical thinking and empirical reason to come somewhere. But if you go, for instance, into ethics, it moves to a different bucket. It's going to protect some ethical responsibility that it has. And that is extremely fascinating.
And there's a few things I would like to quickly point out here that are super relevant as well. Because, again, the skeptics of AI, right, have been saying for 2-3 years now, these large language models are stochastic parrots. And that translated means they can only repeat back to us what we told them. They don't understand what they're doing. They don't understand what they're saying. They cannot think ahead. They cannot plan. They cannot reason. And people come up with the ridiculous Chinese room a comparison where there's a person in a room who's just combining things, but he doesn't understand what he's doing. But what we're finding here is that these models actually do a lot of stuff that are not stochastic parroting, not at all. Right? So we're seeing complexity theory at work here. And Anthropic is literally, we already knew empirically that there was more to it, but the skeptics were refusing to accept that. But now, through what Anthropic is doing and their experiments, they're proving that even large language models, even though they were shit at human level reasoning, they were already thinking ahead. They're not just calculating the next word. They were thinking, okay, this is more or less the end of the outcome I want. And how is that correct? How can I get there? And this is incredibly valuable to realize, because that proves that there's much more to this technology than we currently understand. And complexity theory is at work here. And the funny thing is that this perfectly aligns with what Ray Kurzweil already said in his book, The Singularity is Near, in 2004. He said, the advancements in AI will lead to further advancements in neuroscience to understand the human brain, and vice versa. These two fields will effectively accelerate each other. And that's literally what we're seeing here, because in this blog, Amodai specifically says, if you're in neuroscience, this would be super interesting for you to focus on, because by focusing on interpretability, we can also help better understand the human mind.
Yeah, he even uses a phrase which I like. It's basically an AIMRE scan. So it's difficult for us to scan our brain and come to conclusions how it actually works. It might even be easier to do an MRI scan on an AI, because we can actually see the data flowing and take conclusions of that. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And then the third thing that he does, he's also opening an economic council board to come up with reports. And we've had a couple of these reports before as well. So how are people using it? What will be the economic benefit? And it's all these type of reports that I really appreciate. He's participating in the AI race, but does it in a way that he makes transparent what it's all about. And I would love to see more of these kind of reports from other vendors as well. You rarely see something like this from OpenAI.
Well, that's not entirely true.
Right.
Because OpenAI did a multi-year research for example, into UBI, preparing already starting 3-4 years ago, I think, for the possibility of AI massively impacting the labor force.
Yeah,
You don't agree?
I've read it. I don't know. It was not really convincing, that report. They kind of state that OBI is not going to work at all, and I don't know.
Okay, so we might not think that the outcome was what we like, or that the research was very good, but I mean, you said nobody else is doing this, and I think that
Right. Okay.
we should be
True.
fair that we already. I mean, Amudai is just saying we're going to start doing this now, and I think that this all is great, right? I'm just saying that it's not entirely that he's the only one doing it. And then coming back to what I said earlier, what I don't understand is that on the one hand, he's continuously hammering this like, oh, it's for the good of humanity, and it all needs to be for the good of humanity, and we're doing all of this for the good of humanity. But then, as soon as just some developer somewhere is trying to create something cool, they slap him with a court order and sue them, and I just can't understand that. Like, they're even hurting themselves, because I don't know, maybe you followed this, but I think at the end of last year, Anthropic rolled out a protocol for agent-to-agent communication, etc. But they're being so inflexible around that nobody wants to use it, right? And Google just rolled out an agent-to-agent protocol, and Meta is doing the same thing. And they basically said like, oh yeah, and we're just going to let everybody use it, and you can use it whatever way you want, because we just want you to use it. And I mean, this is an upside-down world, where Google is doing that and Anthropic is not, where this guy is saying, well, I want it to be for the good of humanity. I mean, if he really wanted that, why are they being so inflexible around that, making it
True. They're making it a little bit difficult for themselves, but still, I love these kind of reports. I just find it,
true. Okay, cool.
Yeah, but good point you make there, Aragorn. Absolutely. Move to some robot news, or more about Anthropic?
No. Let's move on from topic.
Well, a lot of robot news coming out.
Yeah, you have this stuff on robotic hands. Did you see the video of the girl who has a robotic hand that is remote controlled, and she could take it off and could crawl across the table with it? That was like an Addams Family movie going on.
I don't have it here, but if you look it up, that would be cool, because those combined with this is just a 3D printed hand, right? So basically, you can get for I think $800 the whole specs. You can print it at home. You can AI generate, control the hand, put it on an arm, and it got 29 different motions that it can apply with. It's just not remote controlled at the moment, but that would be cool.
You've
got to see this.
We have
I'll just help to the.
completely wireless, so you can actually just detach the hand like that,
You're thinking about it.
and I can still operate in it the same way as if it was attached. Make it move.
That is incredible.
This is
like Addams Family.
Yeah. So I can do little tasks for me when I can't be bothered.
Have you ever
And
had
also-
any mishaps where you've left it somewhere?
Well, I am sure that I will be like something like that will happen. I haven't had them long enough to make a mess of it yet, but yeah.
Also, the practical jokes and wind-ups you can use that for.
Oh yeah, so much.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's crazy. But this just ties into something we've covered before. But we are well and truly moving into the age of cybernetics now. And within 10, 20 years, there will be so many people running around with super advanced cybernetics, which they can probably also maintain and alter by 3D printing technologies at home. So I follow this guy called Optimum. And he's a super cool guy. He has his own bat cave. But he also recently posted a video about his... And yes, it's 10,000 euros, I think. But he has a new 3D printer, which he uses. And it's very expensive. But the quality and the granularity of that machine is just so insane. And this is another development we haven't talked about much. But I 100% believe that as a part of also the push to sustainability, over the next 2 decades, we'll see a introduction of 3D printing technology in almost every kind of middle-class home, where a lot of the products that we need will become 3D printable at a very, very detailed level, and we'll start to recycle in our own homes, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And this is also an interesting one. I just bumped into this one. It's called Pi-O5. And we've been talking many times about NVIDIA's GROOT system, that you can train these things in a digital environment.
Yep.
This team has trained a robot to be functional in any living room without seeing the living room for the first time. So basically what they've done, they've tested this robot in different Airbnb homes, just put it in there and asked, do the dishes, fold my clothes, open this, clean the bathtub, all these kind of things. And the robot is just successfully executing all these kind of things.
Yeah, it's important to note here that, so this ties into some other things. So you have a point in the newsletter we were going to cover about Unitree G1 scaling up their production, and you can cover that in a second. But tied to that, we've already mentioned in this newsletter before how Figure One is upping their production. They think they're going to roll out 100,000 robots this year. And Figure announced, well, by the end of 2025, we're starting out rolling out robots into the household. And the same was announced by a Norwegian company called X1.
Neo.
It's producing the Neo. They're also rolling out humanoid robots into the household. But the reason for this is super interesting, because initially a lot of people that I talked to said, well, why would they roll out humanoid robots to the household if they can sell it B2B and they can have them work in factories? Then they can probably sell them for more money. It's easier because the tasks are more repetitive, etc. But here's the kicker. Let's use some AI language. Here's the kicker.
Come on with the kicker, man.
They found that if they put these robots in the household, they improve much faster because they learn much faster. Because in your average house, it's so messy that these robots are confronted with all these super, weird situations that train their motor skills, that train their understanding, and therefore their progress is significantly faster. So now these companies are not just rolling out humanoid robots into the household because it's a market, but because it allows them to train their complete fleet of robots significantly faster in doing all these complicated tasks.
Exactly. So just look at what we just discussed in just, 10 minutes, right? So a robot hand can be controlled from a distance. You can print it at home. It can learn an environment on its own. And they're being mass scaled up for usage at home and tasks in the garden and stuff like that. It's pretty amazing.
Yep.
Let me do one knockout one, because have you seen Terminator 2? This is, of course, an obvious question.
I hate the Terminator comparisons with AI, right? I know.
Yeah, but this is not about the AI Terminator thing. This is about the T-1000 robot. So here we go.
Meet PB, the liquid robot.
So now they have created a robot that can basically split itself, because part of the cells are created of Teflon and can reassemble itself. And they have done all kind of successful tasks. So basically, we now have the T-1000 liquid robot that can self-assemble. Man, it was just like kind of really blew me away when I saw this for the first time.
Yeah, this is crazy. And it is. Yeah, what can we possibly say about this? But it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
it's just, and of course they're not referring to the T-1000s, but more to the biological application. So the purpose of this robot is to go into a body, find the right cancer cells, and destruct them. That is, of course, a cool use case.
Yeah.
So enough about robots. Food for thought, right? So
So let's make a little bridge here. It might actually, but man, I need to ask Martijn Vinke. He's the bridge maker. We have this guy in Ambassadors, and he just is on the radio a lot with future voices and future product, and he makes these amazing bridges. But as a bridge and talking about the radio. So we've spoken in the past. We've spoken in the past about how Klarna, for example, at the start of 2024, they started to use GPT-4 in their customer service chatbots, and it was a success. People didn't even know they were talking to an AI in many cases, and they were helped significantly well. Now, something happened in Australia. Apparently, an Australian radio station was using an AI host for months, and nobody knew.
For 4 months. Indeed, and nobody knew. And it was not a show. I think the show was even hours long as well.
Yeah. So it was on the ARN, Australian Radio Network. The voice was named Di for 6 months without disclosing to listeners that the host was not human. Yeah. And the voice was created using 11 labs, which is, of course, something that we've covered before, modeled after one of their real employees. So they basically trained the voice model on 11 labs on the voice of a real employee. And the deception came to light when writer Stephanie Coombs questioned Di's identity due to the lack of personal information and social media presence. The revelation
they got a big backlash.
They got backlash.
People were frustrated and irritated.
But why? See, that's complete human irrationality, right? The only reason that they're annoyed is because they feel they were lied to, right?
Yeah,
it's because they feel they were cheated. It's not because something was inherently problematic about it. I mean, they're listening to the radio. Like all you really care about is where you
They
have
enjoyed it for 4 months,
whether
right?
you're enjoying it. They enjoyed it for 4 months, but now it's suddenly a problem. It's like it's so hypocritical, but it's so human, right? Yeah.
It is. It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just fun, and then maybe bridge it to the last topic that I also found, Aragorn.
I find it such a weird thing, this technology that you're going to show now. Like, well, I was looking at it and I was reading, and people are super excited about it. And to me, it just also feels really weird.
It is really weird. So basically, what is happening here? We are looking at the world's first interactive 3D holographic display.
Yeah.
And for the people that have been in virtual reality, there are these haptic gloves, so you can kind of feel a digital object, right? A digital object, does it exist? Is it out there in space, or is it just a figment of your imagination in a way, right? It's a very interesting philosophical question.
Yeah.
Now they have a hologram, so you can actually, as you can see here on the video, move.
But when you see that, like it's elastic bands that go up and down really, really fast, and I'm like, it's so weird.
That's the trick that they pull to do it. Indeed, yeah. It's fascinating.
I have to be honest, man. When I see stuff like this, the first thing I think is not like, oh, this is technology of the future. I mean, yes, it's interesting and it looks cool, but come on, this is going to be gimmick. I mean, who the hell is going to be sticking their hands into a machine that's oscillating elastic bands? These bands are probably going to be destroyed after you use it 3 times. It's just, I don't know, man.
No, this is just a prototype and a team trying to find ways to find that interaction. But that will be improved, of course, over time.
Yeah, but
that
the
you can
truth
really interact with an hologram or with a 3D object.
Oh, sure, but I think that the path to that is the path of augmented reality glasses like the Orions or the new Google ones that we covered in the last newsletter.
Yeah.
Where they're projecting in your eye and then combining that with there's some at the start of this year at the Consumer Electronics Expo in Vegas, there was a lot of really cool new haptic feedback devices for your hands, for your body. There was even devices that kind of stimulate your fingers so that you actually feel things when you touch it. And I think that the real progress is going to be there in cybernetics as well. I mean, I think ultimately we might come to a point where you put on a headset and that headset will basically send the signals of touch to your brain when you touch things in 3D, and your hand will just freeze because it will think that it's pushing on an object or feeling an object. And then to me, this kind of physical approach, I think it's just a dead end. I might be wrong, but I think it's a dead end. Yeah.
Talking about ends, I think that was all we needed to cover.
I want to say this to our listeners and to our readers. I know there's stuff in the world to be worried about, right? We have a war front in Europe, on the border of Europe. We have escalating tensions in Israel and the Middle East. I see at least, and I know that I'm a little bit more on the right side of my political information streams on social media than a lot of maybe our readers and listeners. But I do think that we're seeing an increase in all kinds of troubles in society, polarization, things like that. Although I saw several researchers that say there's no real increased polarization, but I do feel that there is definitely some stuff going on. And so at the very least, we're more aware of it. And that might sometimes lead to the feeling that we're heading into difficult times. And I'm not going to lie, I think that there will be some difficult challenges ahead, but there's also great reason for optimism. And we shouldn't lose sight of that.
No, I agree. I totally agree. Did you happen to see the TED Talk of Tristan Harris?
No. But he's usually a very, 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 I mean, he's a doomer in my opinion.
He is. And he's back after his extensive work on social network. He has a new TED talk. We can include it in the newsletter as well. I think it's interesting to share, where he explains the dangers of AI, which are quite obvious. And he talks about a narrow path. And basically my takeaway from the whole thing is, you have to understand what AI is. You have to be clear about what AI can do and see the benefits and the disadvantages of that. And I was just thinking about it while you were saying that. The more we can share about what it exactly is, the more people on a global base understand it, the better it is to find that narrow path. Otherwise, we end up in what he called either in chaos, either in dystopian, and the path between that is the narrow path that he highlights.
There is, when Tristan Harris and Asa Reskin did the AI Dilemma talk 2 years ago, which was really important at the time, and still so many people haven't seen it as an eye-opener on progress on AI. Tristan Harris literally opened by saying, one day I woke up and I thought that somebody told me about the Manhattan Project or something, blah, blah, blah. And he basically compares AI directly to nuclear bombs and how it could potentially wreck the world. And the first thing I thought when he did that was like, wow, that's really the worst way to approach this. Because by putting that idea in people's minds, you are basically scaring them and you completely robbing them of the potential of seeing the great, incredible things it can do and focusing on that. And I think focus, I mean, we see this in quantum physics, we see this in psychology. Focus is everything. It's not about being aware of risks. It's about being aware of potential upsides and focusing on those. And that's what I would really like to see. And so being aware and being informed is one thing, but focus is also important, because when the internet rose, we thought that if people just had access to information, that would fix everything. We now know that it doesn't really fix anything. It doesn't matter how much potential, technically how easy it is to access information, people will still be stupid, right? They will still choose to believe lies and to focus on all the wrong things. So it's not about the access alone. It is about being educated. It's about having the capacity for critical thought. And it's about focusing on the potential beneficial output and potential beneficial applications for humanity.
Yeah.
Because if all of us do that and we work towards those, then the negative outcomes have a significantly smaller chance of ever being realized.
Yeah, I agree. It's about choosing to live in the best possible world, right? Yeah. All right.
And with that, we wrap it up. We thank you all for another amazing edition and episode of the Innovation Newsletter number 30. Thank you all for having gone and come with us on this journey and continuing on this journey. And if you are continuing us on the journey, of course, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and follow. Send this to your mother, send this to your father, send this to your children, send it to everybody who you want to be surfing the waves of abundance towards the singularity. And is there anything else to add, Patrick?
See you later.
Like we say in the Netherlands, see you later.
Bridging the gap of exponential growth, Patrick and Aragorn share the truth. Join our community, let's